So before I turn over to Derek, I just want to tell a very brief story about the history of our facilities at Victor Central School District. Back in 1939, a very forward-thinking Board of Education decided to purchase 166 acres of the Ladd Farm and build a single schoolhouse on those 166 acres, which happens to be the place we're in right now. And from my little study of history back then, it wasn't exactly the most popular decision to buy 166 acres when they didn't have enough students to fill that space. However, it's a very popular decision now, because if you fast forward to 2024, we now have 8 buildings on this 166 acres and over 5,000 people that are on our campus 5 days a week during the school year. I have to give a huge shout out to all of the school boards between 1940 and now who have done an amazing job trying to keep up with that type of enrollment increase. I mean, since 2012, or since in the past 15 years, there's been over 500 kids that have been added to the district. And since 2012, they've done it. The board has done, the district has done 5 capital projects just in that time, and certainly many capital projects before that, so they could build buildings and build spaces to house this number of kids. What's been a significant challenge for this district, and is just amazing to deal with, is trying to keep up with that significant increase in enrollment. And I know that enrollment has stabilized the last few years, but to try to build the buildings and the classrooms to house that number of kids is very difficult, especially in a district that for many, many years had significant financial challenges from the state, where at one point we were the lowest per pupil expenditure school district of all school districts in New York State. So because of that, although we've been able to get enough space to house our kids and our staff, we haven't had enough space to fully support our large population of the students and staff, both within the confines of our buildings and on the campus, as anyone can tell when you're trying to park here. So the number of people on this campus has been a challenge. 2 other quick challenges. One is the complexity of our students has significantly increased over the past few years, past many years really. Significant number increase of students with disabilities, a significant increase in our English as new language learners, a significant increase in our students who are economically disadvantaged, and a significant increase in students who are challenged with mental health issues and mental health needs, just like students from across the country who have those needs. Those require very direct teaching, very specific teaching and support in smaller spaces to deliver that type of teaching. In addition to that, there's been new standards from New York State around 21st century learning goals, which includes a major focus on specialized classrooms to really support STEAM and STEM education, which includes science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics, and a major focus on CTE education, which is career and technical education, which again, these types of learning and teaching methods and teaching programs requires more specific, tailored teaching in very specialized classrooms. So the combination of the number of kids, the increased complexity of our kids, and the increased demands from the state around specialized instruction has created a tremendous strain on the current space in our district. We see that through many examples. It's challenging when teachers at the intermediate building are teaching out of closets. It is challenging when we have science labs at the junior high, one science lab for multiple science classrooms, and the science lab is not equipped for the type of 21st century science instruction that we need. It's challenging when you have multiple self-contained special education classrooms, whether it's 811 and resource room or other types of special ed programming all in one classroom when they really need to be separate, or a self-contained classroom, a sensory room, and an ENL room all in the same classroom. Those aren't supposed to be that way. So the great news is a big shout out to this board, because really over the past 18 months, we've all been wrestling with new ideas around the next capital project to put a significant dent into the space challenges. So I am pleased to bring to you, we are pleased to bring to you tonight a final recommendation for our capital project for your potential approval tonight, that ultimately would then, if it was approved, go to the community in the fall. I want to turn it over to Derek, who's going to get much more specific now around this capital project.
Thank you, Dr. Terranova. So, just a reminder, we're going to go over the scope. With the scope, we'll talk about the themes that kind of builds up that scope. An update from facilities planning. We've been doing this for a long time. Fortunately, we have some positive news today. And then, based off of what Dr. Terranova shared, what a piece of information that's going to be critical for your decision making is what is the impact, what is the cost, and then with that, the timeline. So as we built the project, everything kind of fit into 4 large categories. Those categories were safety and security, building renovations and innovations, some of that's at 21st century classrooms that Dr. Terranova was speaking about, facilities repairs, we got to maintain our buildings, and then additions based on enrollment and space needs. So some of these examples for safety and security include secure vestibules, new PA systems so we can adequately communicate in our buildings, security office space, additional parking, ADA enhancement, and turfing of the soccer fields. And we'll talk more about why that fell into that category. In the building and renovations and innovations, we include gymnasium improvements, air conditioning for large spaces, and that is a new add to the scope for this presentation. So we do want to highlight that air conditioning for large spaces is new. Renovating existing spaces back into classrooms such as offices, renovating the main offices, renovating the learning center and the old bus garage and bathrooms. Some facilities repairs include roof replacement, sanitary line replacements, HVAC repairs, and elevator repairs. And then obviously, the addition based on space and enrollment are the needs that Dr. Terranova spoke about, both cafeteria and classroom spaces at the intermediate, junior, and senior high. So at the early childhood school, the list is right there. We kind of broke them out into categories so you can see where we derived our numbers and what we went into. So the main highlights on this would be the secure entrance, a transaction window as you come in. Currently, if you're coming to drop something off, you now have to enter into the office space. So basically like a teller window, so then you can exchange information with the office without coming into the building. Staff parking, so over in the parking lot over by district office, we're looking to expand closer to Field 24. Some of the PA clock upgrades, and then some other renovations throughout the building. In the primary school, we're looking to renovate the old records room into a classroom. It does not look like the rest of the building. There's some work that includes, it's mostly flooring and asbestos abatement, a main office renovation and reconfiguration. They will also receive the PA and clock upgrades, and their parking lot 2 will go towards field number 24 to expand for staff parking.
So I'm not smart enough to do all of this, so I'm just going to talk about the addition piece. I will mention air conditioning, so the large spaces are cafeterias and gymnasiums in all 5 buildings. A couple points about that. Number one, we had to close school for 2 half days this past spring because the heat index was significantly above 100. We believe, it's not a guarantee, but we believe that if we can increase the space for air conditioning, and especially these large spaces in all 5 buildings, it significantly decreases our need to do that. Again, I can't guarantee we wouldn't, but it certainly gives the opportunity for kids to be put in spaces that are conducive to learning. A second piece is we had to spend a significant amount of money to get temporary cooling systems in our junior and senior high gymnasiums. Certainly, we don't want to do that every year. This would take that out of the equation, and because you never can guarantee that we could actually get that type of equipment. And just from just a quality of life situation, the more spaces that we can condition with air, or have air conditioning, the better and the better for kids. If you've ever walked through our buildings when it's 95 degrees inside a classroom, you know what I'm talking about. I wish we could do the whole district, but again, we're trying to balance the needs of the district with the needs of the financial needs of our community. I do want to talk briefly about the additions at the intermediate school. That's 5 classrooms with 2 student restrooms, adding 1,500 square feet to the cafeteria. Here's some specifics for that. We have over 1,000 kids in 47 sections in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade next year. We barely have enough room right now to have 47 sections of classes, which means all the other really important types of teaching that need to happen that I talked about earlier are scrambling to find space. So by having this project, we're going to stop using closets to teach from. We're going to eliminate doubling special ed programs in one classroom, like having a 12-1-1 and a resource room in one classroom. We're going to be able to have a separate sensory room for some of our students in self-contained classrooms, and also have an ENL classroom instead of trying to share the two. In other words, one of the things that's been a kind of a domino effect of this is we are basically, unfortunately, at the intermediate building, segregating special ed kids from general ed kids because there's not enough space to integrate and have special areas and then move them back into the classroom. This would stop that segregation. It would also allow academic intervention services to have their own spaces to support kids, and certainly the cafeteria space would make for more appropriate lunch times because we could put more kids in the cafeteria. We'd have an additional lunch line, which would make the flow much more reasonable.
Thank you. In addition to those upgrades that Dr. Terranova mentioned, we're looking to do a little bit of renovations in the restrooms, both student and staff restrooms, some sound treatments to the music room because there are classrooms around them, so try to soften the noise so other students in the surrounding classrooms can learn. Remove a wall between room 181, 183 to create a larger space, some HVAC replacement, roofing work, the PA clock, and the air conditioning, and they too will be getting a new parking lot, so not an expansion of a parking lot, but a new parking lot over in the near the new addition. And Dr. Terranova talked about the additions of the junior senior high.
So as you see, we are looking to add 19 roughly 19 additional instructional spaces. Again, adding to the junior high cafeteria and upgrading electrical services. Examples of why we need this is we want to eliminate multiple junior high science classrooms from having to share a science lab that's not adequately equipped to teach science. So we'd be increasing those types of spaces. We're going to add space to in the high school, so we actually have a teaching space for our work-based learning program. We know that work-based learning occurs outside of school, but you also have to have classroom instruction that goes along with it. We don't have the space for that right now. This would go a long way in allowing more kids to participate in that. We want to eliminate the division of our high school library right now. Right now, the library is really split into 3 things. It's a special education classroom for a self-contained group of students. It's a college and career center. It's also the office for work-based learning currently. Oh, by the way, it's supposed to be the library as well. In this project, we're going to be able to actually have the library be the library and build enough space for the special education programming as well as work-based learning and career center so that kids and college recruiters and work recruiters can come in and actually have an actual space where they can work with kids. We want to increase room for business classes and computer science. An example right now, we have 9 business courses that are taught in 2 classrooms. It's very challenging to fit all 9 courses into 2 classrooms and allow kids to participate in that. We want to increase space for additional self-contained special ed classrooms. There's not as many self-contained, especially 811 program classrooms in the high school. This would allow us to continue servicing kids who need that type of support from the junior high to the high school and possibly bring in outside kids from outside the district into the space. We want to increase related service provider space because we've increased staff members in those types of areas, whether it's speech, PT, OT, and other social workers, but they don't have the space to work with kids right now. We need that space, and that will allow for it. We also are looking at the potential of utilizing part of this new space for a community mental health clinic that would be operationalized during the day and after school. That would really be an added support for not just the students, but our families and the community. And the junior high cafeteria expansion is important because part of that expansion is tied to increasing space for students who struggle with sensory distortion and having too much senses coming at them and struggling with that. So it'd be a sensory-friendly area in the cafeteria that would support all kids, as well as the overall quality of life. If you walk through the junior high when it's packed in terms of that cafeteria, there's not a lot of room to eat. So that would support that as well.
In addition to the additions, we also will be including secure vestibules both at the junior high and the senior high, and a relocation of the junior high and senior high if the addition is to go across the front of the building. We don't need families to walk through the buildings to get to the main office, so we would like to move them to the exterior of the building. Convert what is currently a junior high locker room that's used mostly for storage into a space for our security department office. Currently they're again in a shared space. We kind of find a way for them, but now they have a dedicated space where they can do their investigation work. Turfing of field number 7 with ADA accessible and sidewalk. Some of the feedback that we received during the development of the scope was towards sectional play. The field tends to get a little rough, and it is concerning for students to be playing on it. In addition to that, marching band practices in the north parking lot. This will provide them an opportunity and a space to safely, out of the way of traffic, be able to practice. So that is why we put in the safety security. It is a renovation, but the main purpose of why it got included into the scope was the safety and security of our students. Modify the existing bleachers at Corbett Field to be ADA compliant. There is bleachers that are ADA compliant. We're talking about the middle section so families can participate and get a better view as well. As Dr. Terranova mentioned, we're going to be adding health clinics at both the junior high, the senior high, and then about 5,700 square feet of roofing replacement. The Victor Learning Center, Operations Center, and district-wide. So we are looking at a complete renovation of the Victor Learning Center. This would include the parking lot, the light fixtures outside. We have a temporary COI from New York State to use the space, but we do need to get it up to fire code, which is just a secondary egress. So there'll be man doors on the back of the building, so it's code compliant. Again, we have permission from New York State to use it as is, but we are limited in the amount of students that we can put in here. So as we make these renovations, we'll be able to increase the number of students, and as we've been using the space, we're learning more of how we could reconfigure that space to better fit our needs. The Operations Center, which is the old bus garage, we are looking to add a CTE automotive program and another class that we're still exploring, electrical program, something that will probably tie into that automotive program. And then district-wide, we're looking to replace 10,000 linear feet of sidewalks, just a routine maintenance. We always have a little placeholder for some. And then almost 27,000 square feet or linear feet of driveways around campus. So the cost breakup of this project, $23 million is going towards safety and security, just under $20 million to building renovations, $10 million to facility repairs, And the large amount is additions based off of enrollment, some of that is site work, which brings the total up to $99,419,031. I'm going to pause at that if there's any questions for any of the board at this point.
Mr. Felice, I have one about the District Learning Center. So it's worded as, thank you, complete renovation. So just to be clear, this is then soup to nuts, everything, because then there's going to be normal depreciation over years, so that we can then look at this piece of property, which, again, I applaud the board for purchasing it to vote to do that, that we're not going to have to touch this for any capital project or normal budgetary things for some years to come.
That's the plan. We want to get a new roof on it, update the boiler, the parking lot, the lights, reconfigure the spaces for our need going forward. Yes, that would be the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Belize, was there any discussion about a walkway or a sidewalk that connects the Learning Center up to campus? Or is that just not plausible based on the land that's directly behind the building?
It is plausible. I mean, there has been discussion about it. We haven't really defined where that 10,000 linear feet is going to occur. That could be it.
This could be included in that?
Potentially, yes. One of the things that we did explore was adding additional parking, but if you are up by the pool, you can see where the water is. It actually goes under the ground there, so in order to add parking in that space, there would be a significant increase, but I believe the two gentlemen over here are better experts than I am, but I believe that it should be sufficient to support a sidewalk.
To start, then to go back to that point, does the complete renovation cost include us doing a sidewalk now, not coming back a year later or 2 years later? Not that it's an exorbitant cost, but it's still cost.
So we haven't really defined where that 10,000 linear feet is. So it could be that in that project, could not. It could be that bids come in really well and that we can add it if they come in. Again, to your point, it's not a significant cost to adding a sidewalk. There is one that currently already goes down the walkway over there. So,
Okay. No, thank you very much.
Yep. So, so one of the questions may be is how did we go from $75 million to $99 million? So the original scope of $75 million, that estimate was created back in March of 2023. Since then, there has been increased costs all around both labor and materials. Additionally, since we had a lot of time to think about what this addition is going to look like, we've been able to kind of conceptually understand what we wanted in these spaces, and our architect with campus construction was able to get a better justification of what the cost is. So some of it is due to a clearer scope, increase in escalation in prices, just throughout the years. I had another, and then there was also some additional increases. So when we had the $75 million, we did not have the CTE classroom plus another one in the original scope. The air conditioning was not in the original one. And one of the approaches that we want to do is this does include an escalation factor. And we have seen other districts in the past that without that escalation factor, after they made a promise to the community, they had to do cuts into the project. So this $99 million, we feel comfortable that what we're telling the community we're going to actually be able to provide to them. So that was very critical in getting to that dollar amount, because some person may be voting on a certain item, and the last thing we want to do is remove that from the project because of quotes. So, the scope of the project versus cost. Despite the total cost, the financial implication to the community will be minimal due to the significant building aid that we will be talking about in the near future, plus savings from the capital reserve. So, after an 18-month battle with Facilities Planet, we were able to get the amount of the junior senior high addition aid ability up to just under $11 million. So before, when we spoke a couple months ago, we were only at about $442,000. They were going to aid one secure vestibule at $442,000, which was about 2% of that addition. Now we are sitting about 55% of this building, and That number arguably should be higher as part of the calculation when they figure out the number of interchangeable classrooms we should have. They use a student occupancy of 30 students. We were unable to get them to move on that number. So it's not that these classrooms are not needed, it's just that they use an archaic number of the number of students that we're supposed to put in there. So if we were to go back through the state's calculation and use our enrollment numbers or class size number of 25, this addition is probably maybe not quite what we need, but it's something that we can live with. So although it's only 55% aided, it's based off of really old numbers, but that makes 80% of the project eligible for aid because 45% of that addition was not eligible and the intermediate cafeteria expansion. So 80% of the project will be receiving 75% aid.
Derek, just for the junior, senior high or every part?
The entire, so 55% of the junior, senior high, but 80% of the entire project is eligible for aid.
So 100 million,
$80 million is eligible.
28 from our reserves, and then the rest is going to get 80% aid.
Well, even the stuff that comes out of our reserve is eligible for aid too. So even if we're paying for it, it is a approved project by SED and is eligible for aid as well.
So what is the swag on how much the state would be paying off of that total?
So if I'm doing just rough about 55 million. So I'm just taking 80 million and 75% of that, 55, 60 million.
If it came in less and we didn't use the overage, is it kind of like the state doesn't give as much aid and we get some of it back, or is it one or the other?
So if we don't, are you saying if we don't spend the whole $99 million?
Yeah, if we don't use that, because part of that is a percentage, it's an overage, just
Right.
in case.
So if we don't use that, we will never borrow it, so we won't have debt payment, but we also won't have aid. So you don't have to borrow all of it if you don't go that far.
Gotcha.
Yep. So through the process, as you go in the beginning part, we will capitalize on our capital reserve. So the beginning part of the construction will be paid for in cash through our capital reserve. And then you issue what's called a bond anticipation note, which is our short-term borrowings. Once the project's done, then you do the bond, which is the long-term financing. And at that time is when you figure out how much the district will be paying for the next 15 years.
Are you considering like a spot rate or a forward rate on that bond, or you have guidance on that?
So there's a lot of speculation in the market because the timing of when this will come to borrow, because again, after the committee votes on it in October, if approved, we go into a design phase, then you go into a review phase where you send the drawings to SED, and then you got to get their approval, then campus construction and their team help us develop the bids, then you award the contracts, and then we start the ground. So we're looking at not even doing our first borrowing until 2.5, 3 years from now, because we're going to start using our cash first. We don't want to be paying interest on money when we have money towards this project. So it's hard to tell. We are hearing interest rates will be dropping in September, but that's a tough market to speculate in. Exactly. So of the $99 million, in today's construction dollars, it's $76 million. $5 million is for anticipated escalation costs between now and this whole process that we kind of touched on a little bit, speaking with Mr. Adams, but we'll share more in a little bit. And then $18 million is for incidental costs. This is for the attorney fees to write the resolution, doing the seeker, our architect, the construction management, and other incidental costs that come up with it. And that brings us up to the full $99 million. With the use of the $28 million that we have the capital reserve, and again, this is probably a conservative estimate because we won't be borrowing this money for 2.5, 3 years. Also, the aid numbers that I gave you about the senior high was based off of February's costs. So by the time contracts are done, the state may actually give us more because they also adjust for inflation. So a conservative number for a $300,000 home is $55 per year, which if you divide over 12 months is less than $5 per month. Any questions on that?
Can you also then speak to if it's $55 a year for a $300,000 home, ballpark, $100,000 house, $200,000 house, just to give the community, if they're tuning in, some of those numbers?
So I think if I take 55 and divide by 3, what is that? You're testing my math here. 18 per year. Is that close? $18 per year for per $100,000 home.
Okay.
Do you know how many families or homes that consist of, that number?
So we're working through trying to get that number, and as you guys know, that's a moving target in this community. I mean, there's lots of, we know that there's roughly, I think there was 9,000 tax bills we issued, but with that, there's apartment complexes, there's lots of land, there's farmlands to know exactly how many are occupied residential houses. We're going to try to work on that number to kind of break it down on a per family basis as part of our communication plan.
Can you get housing start information in the district too over the next couple of years?
Absolutely.
I think that's that doesn't seem to be slowing down.
Right, yes. So as we got that information from the town of Victor and the town of Farmington in order to do our enrollment study. They are a great resource. They're very helpful for the district. We can absolutely reach out to them and kind of help project that as well.
I was communicating with Dr. Terranova 2 days ago, and I said, I'd mentioned that I thought a good communication tool would be to say, hey, the average family is going to invest this much into this project, or you're going to get this much back. Maybe it's not in your own home, but back into our community, which is money you were never going to see in the first place. So I think that would be helpful for people to hear it in those terms.
Yep, absolutely.
For everyone who's not packing the chairs here right now, but might watch this later. So the cost of the project, 99,419,031. We end up using our reserves, certain percentage, which we don't know yet, gets approved for aid. So we've approved 99 million. If we come in under that, does that money then come back to where we're looking at it saying we're going to approve to put it in the capital reserve for future funds?
We wouldn't even borrow it.
We wouldn't take it. We just
No, what I'm saying is, so if I'm at home, I'm going, oh, well, this is going to increase my tax this much per month. If that's happening and I'm paying those, and we spend less, what happens to the money that I've already been paying in my taxes?
So the $55 per year won't kick in for 2.5, 3 years until we start borrowing. So if we don't end up needing it, it would never have went into their tax bill. They would have never paid it.
Right, so that's what I'm saying. I just want to put that on record. So if we don't spend the 99, that's actually not the impact. It's going to be even less than that.
Oh, absolutely,
Taxpayers.
yes.
I just want to make sure that they understand.
My misunderstanding. Yep, but that's absolutely true.
Then future residential builds that fall into any of these categories, they will continue to also pay
If
this.
it gets spread amongst them, it's part of it's part of the tax cap calculation. It's called the capital exclusion at the end. So it gets built in the levy. So it's not just houses that exist today that have to bear
Future
the tax
houses
burden.
as
It's
well.
everybody is forever.
Yeah, I think that's why I was asking about housing start information, if you kind of had that to forecast or project.
Yes. Yeah, again, we feel that 55 is probably, again, a conservative number, but we don't want to be dishonest. So updated timeline, we are seeking approval of the seeker and the capital project today. We will work on a communication plan, and hopefully we have a public vote on Thursday, October 24th. If approved, we will start the design work of the additions. Most of it, we kind of have a conceptual idea, but we do want to involve stakeholders, the people in the spaces that are using it. You know, when we originally came up with the idea, our needs may have shift, our course offering may have changed. So we'll clearly define what that scope will look like during that period. Once we get those design works, the architects will build the drawings, and then we submit the drawings to facilities planning. And as of what I did this presentation, the wait time to approve the drawing is at 30 to 32 weeks. There's an asterisk, we'll talk about that. Issue bids in the spring of 2026, and then hopefully break ground summer of 2026. So several years ago, New York State has implemented what's called a third-party reviewer for these projects because they were getting into the pipeline and they were backed up, and you're seeing this timeline. So the BOCES out of the capital region did a RFP for architects to kind of do the preliminary review with notes, turning it over to facilities planning, and it expedited the process down to 4 to 8 weeks roughly, depending on the size of the project. Unfortunately, the architects started losing money on it, so they discontinued it. People stopped doing projects because of COVID. Now everybody's coming out of COVID, and they're now being inundated with people requesting capital project. So I think the timeline was October that New York State is going to roll out this third-party reviewer. If we were doing a $4 or $5 million project, I wouldn't recommend it, but as we saw in the escalation of the last 18 months and the size of this project, it would be my recommendation that the district would use some of the incidental money to pay for a third-party reviewer. It would be eligible for building aid that would stop any other additional escalations. We've waited long enough. Our staff has been suffering. Our students have been suffering. Let's give them the space to learn and to teach. So that's just a recommendation. So the asterisks represent a timeline using the 30 to 32 weeks that could potentially be shortened if we did use that third-party reviewer. Any questions on that? Dr. Terranova.
So we need to,
I have one question, sorry, and I don't know if it's for Mr. Verlies, Dr. Terranova, or Mr. DeLucia. When we vote, are we voting on also accepting your recommendation to include a third-party review, or are we just voting on the capital project itself?
So are you talking about the third-party review? Mm-hmm. So you don't need to vote on it, but it would be nice to kind of get an informal approval.
Thank you. Approval now, or is it been after we?
It could come at any given time, but if you guys are pretty comfortable with it, you can kind of give us the head nod, and then we can kind of build our timeline and operate that way now.
Is that covered within the 99 million scope?
Yes. No additional increase in costs.
Yeah, and the potential there is that it would stop escalating cost if we get things done sooner.
Absolutely.
So it's money well invested.
Yep.
Yeah, it's my interpretation. So I think you got your nod.
Yeah, I totally got the nod.
Yeah.
So obviously, our communication plan is going to be critical, depending on if the board approves this, then we would move forward with this communication plan, and we put in there, we just need to tell our story, and we need to tell it as transparently as possible and answer any and all questions of the community. And again, just be open and honest about what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we're trying to mitigate costs as much as possible. One of the things that Campus Construction has, and I want to thank George Spinaris and Mark Esposito from Campus Construction for being here. They're going to play an integral role along with SWBR, our architect firm, who both groups did a great job supporting us to try to get more state aid on the project. They have a PR person that works at Campus Construction that can support Kim Dole and Liz Welch, who also do an amazing job, and we can work as a team to promote and tell our story. So everything on this slide is what we're going to do. We're going to have a more specific plan in terms of communication for the board within the next 2 weeks. But it obviously will include social media. It'll include written explanations of our capital project. It'll include question and answers, short facts. It'll include our website being updated with all of this information. We will have most likely multiple videos that will involve the board in to make sure that's broadcast across the community with real pictures and video of what it looks like in these buildings right now to really drive home the evidence of why we need this project done. Multiple presentations to community, which also includes really strong reach out to our different groups, whether it's boosters, the PTSA, et cetera. How do we make sure that all the alumni association, similar to what we did in 2020 around the budget vote, the tax cap, getting all of our groups who have interest in this really involved in advocating for the project itself. Certainly direct mail will play a role. But these are just general concepts. We're going to give you a much more detailed plan of communication, and a big thank you to Kim and Liz for their leadership around that.
So back to the board. Any questions?
I just want to offer a comment that first, the camera adds 10 pounds, so I'm probably going to have to start working out if you're going to put me on video. So I make that on the record. Secondly, I think you stated this at the beginning very clearly, Dr. Terranova, the amount of unprecedented growth we've had since the 40s, but in particular, in the last decade and beyond. And I think we're going to continue to see that growth. I think we are feeling the pains of that growth. This is a really important thing. I think that I don't want to speak for everybody on the board, but I don't think we take this lightly looking at making this decision to go forward, but it's kind of exciting too when you see the mission, vision, and values work that's being put forward, and you really can feel some of this excitement too. So I would not personally want to feel as though a lot of the details that we're looking at now are underscoring how exciting this can be too for the community. So I just wanted to make that comment and say that this feels like a really pivotal moment for us as a district. And it's in line with some of what we've been hearing around the one campus feel and the We Are Victor vibe. So I just wanted to make that comment clearly.
I loved all of the different ideas for the communication plan. A potential other avenue in addition would be if you could have like visuals or something up during the fall open houses, because so many parents inundate those buildings, or the August, September Meet the Teacher days, because again, so many families come in during those times, and it would just be a way for them to just visually see it in a building on our campus. I think the social media pieces and the videos are so important as well, and the direct mailings, but just thinking about when people are physically on the building, in the buildings and, present on campus, and potentially I don't know if it's still called Hang Around Victor Day, but like that would also be another avenue. I know that they do tents and things for different community groups.
Climb Aboard Victor is the new Hang Around Victor Day. I think it's
Saturday.
September 13th or 14th.
What's the one that's
something.
Saturday?
Not this Saturday, September.
I know there's one happening this Saturday
The
too.
music.
We won't hit that.
Yeah, Music Fest. I just want to say, we have needed space for years, so yes, please go as big as you can because it's needed. It's, everybody's kind of feeling the pains of being so tight and not having space. So I applaud you for trying to get the numbers down as well as can be. I think it's worth the investment. As a community member, as a taxpayer, we value this campus and we value having educated kids and happy teachers and all of that. So kudos, do it. The other thing this screams to me is work-based learning opportunity. So the architects, you best have some of our students working with you and shadowing you because it will be a win-win, teaching our kids, and then they can teach you because they're the ones living in the space and they have that history. So from right now, like the planning stage, September, I'm hoping you have SUATs working on getting you interns and things like that. Because it is, that would be a wonderful opportunity and we wouldn't have to worry about students having to do transportation and all that. So it would open it up to so many kids that don't have access to the work-based learning. So I love that idea. So yeah, just making it happen sooner than later is great. So thank you.
Other comments?
I'll just say that we talk about teaching our students perseverance all the time, and I just personally want to thank you, Mr. Valise, because I can't imagine more perseverance that we saw out of you over the last few years in getting us to this point. It was not easy, and I'm sure there were many days you thought this is never going to happen. So thank you for not giving up on our district and showing up today to show us how this all can happen. I think it's teaching all of us and our district a lot about how hard everyone here is working to make these schools better.
That's not possible without a supportive board and a great team to work with. Both
We weren't looking for that. back
colleagues
from
over
you.
there and our architects
okay to
and
be back.
construction. It's a team project.
Yeah, again, just one, thank you. Two, I'm glad that you highlighted the fact that our teachers and students have been suffering too long, because if you take care of the faculty, guess what? That's who takes care of our children. And they then kind of invigorate the adults in the building because of their energy. I have to admit, I first had pause when I saw the number and when we got the preliminary piece. What I've taken away is the time that it was delayed gave everybody to have a more purposefully and positively impactful view of what it is. And so that increase I look as it's a better plan. And I think it's a little bit more educated and it's wiser as far as from a long-term planning process. So I appreciate that, and I'm going to be voting yes.
Yeah, I was going to say, just looking at the increase in numbers from the beginning to now, that just shows you how much the numbers are going to go up in the future. And the majority of that stuff is stuff that's going to happen one way or another. We got to pay for it now or later. Prices are not going down, so let's just get it done now while it's aidable. I don't like spending money, but I like investing, and if it's aidable, then let's go.
Here, here.
Okay. My statement is, I think, I'm paraphrasing something that Derek, you said. Let's give our students quality space for quality education. I think that sums it up quite well. It's a good plan. Let's do it. Okay, anything else before we move on? So I need a motion to approve the State Environmental Quality Review Resolution. It is a negative declaration, which means basically it will not result in any significant adverse environmental impacts. So that's what the State Environmental Quality Review Resolution is about, something the state requires. So a motion, please.
Lisa.
Lisa, second.
Brian?
Brian, any comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion carried. And then the next one is a motion to adopt a resolution of the Victor Central School District, New York, calling a special district meeting to authorize the expenditure of monies for school purposes and the levy of a tax therefore, and the legal notice for the special district meetings as submitted. A motion, please. Elizabeth? Second?
Lisa?
Lisa? Any other comments? All in favor, say aye. 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 Any opposed? Abstentions? Carried. Thank you very much. And then the last thing we want to do is give you that nod you were looking for. To use a third-party evaluator, is that what it is? To help me with the words.
Reviewer.
Third-party reviewer.
Third-party reviewer, thank you. So I think, yeah, everybody nod that you're in agreement that we would do that because it makes sense.
Yes.
Okay, there's your nod. You heard all our heads shaking, right? Great, okay.